Hey everybody, I wanted to talk about something that that's been on my mind lately that I haven't talked about in a while, and that's Jordan Peterson. Now, those who have followed me and follow the channel know that I am very much a fan of Jordan Peterson, of his writing, of his lectures. 12 Rules for Life is an incredible book. The Maps of Meaning lecture is incredible. I've not read the book, but the Maps of Meaning lecture series is incredible. And my favorite of all of his works is his biblical series, where he analyzes the Bible from a cultural anthropological standpoint, from a psychological standpoint, and that sort of thing. And that was that lecture series was critical in helping me appreciate the Bible on an intellectual level. Yes, it was. And so I like a lot of Jordan Peterson's stuff, and I have a lot of respect for him. So much so that I have defended him, not that my defense is particularly necessary, but I have defended him against a number of spurious and untrue accusations. And I'm going to do that again here, and I'm going to do it again in a moment. However, I want to take the opportunity first to address some recent concerns that people have had about a certain authoritarian-sounding shift in tone from Jordan Peterson recently. That he started out as a stalwart champion of the individual and of individual rights, which is part of what drew me to him. But he has recently gone very authoritarian or there's not overtly authoritarian, but there's been an authoritarian undertone in some of the things that he said. I believe the channel's called Genetically Modified Skeptic that did a video about this recently, analyzing some of it. So go there for more specific things of what I'm talking about. But what I believe to be the reason for that is something that happened recently that not a lot of people have been talking about, and that is that Jordan Peterson has become a regular contributing member of the staff over at Daily Wire. So he is not just a recurring interviewee. He is not just a recurring pundit or anything like that. He is now a full-on content creator for the Daily Wire. And the thing about the Daily Wire is a lot of the people who are personalities on that channel are very interesting on their own. They have interesting ideas on their own. And so for an example of that would be Andrew Klavan, who is a highly successful and, as I understand it, highly regarded writer of fiction, especially mystery writing. And he has won, I believe it's 2 Edgar Awards for his mystery novels. So he is a very highly accomplished author of fiction, and I would sit and listen to him, be willing to sit and listen to him talk about the craft of writing for hours, about plot structuring, about character development, all of those things. He has brilliant insights into the craft of writing, and I can't stress that enough. Even if he and I have dramatically different views when it comes to things like the subject of abortion, where I am staunchly pro-choice and he is staunchly pro-life. And we have a lot of other big differences in our worldviews. For example, he is, even in his theological views, he is opposed to women serving as priests. I am very much the opposite direction on that, and a lot of different viewpoints like that. But what happens is when he's speaking as a mouthpiece for the Daily Wire and their ideas, he, like everybody else at the Daily Wire, turns into, I forget the YouTuber who said it, but described the Daily Wire perfectly. It turns into 30 Catholic homeschool kids and their Hasidic leader. And that's the Daily Wire. And now that Jordan Peterson is a regular contributor to the Daily Wire, I do think that his views have been compromised. I don't like that he did it. I don't think it's a good move for him. I don't think it's a good look for him. I don't think it's a good idea. So that's where I think a lot of the recent weirdly, vaguely authoritarian sounding things have come into play. But I want to talk more about an ongoing problem with Jordan Peterson, and something that is unique to Jordan Peterson, where not only are his ideas controversial, but he becomes associated with controversial ideas that not only does he not support, not only has he never expressed support for, but his actual viewpoint is diametrically opposed, is fully the opposite of the actual viewpoint in question. And the reason I bring this up is because Olivia Wilde, who is best known for being the character 13 on the show House, is now. Before I go on, by the way, I keep the table of contents for these videos just in my head as I go. Something else I wanted to say: I did say that there are people who individually within the Daily Wire have the interesting things to say and ideas to offer as individuals disconnected from the party line viewpoint of the Daily Wire. The only one of those people that the only Daily Wire personality that I will single out as having absolutely nothing of value to offer is Candace Owens. And I say that because my original outline for this mental outline for this video, had me making a joke about Candace Owens' mental health, but I decided not to make that joke because I legitimately am worried about her mental health. That woman has made a career out of saying the exact opposite of what is obviously the objective nature of reality, and now I feel like she's gotten to a point where she may not be able to stop. She may not know what objective reality is anymore. And she has made a career out of being a completely repugnant and disgusting individual, and I have no respect for her whatsoever. Anyway, that's a side tangent. Bringing it back around to Olivia Wilde, who is famous for having been 13 on the show House, being the character named 13 on House, not age 13, sorry, if that wasn't clear. But anyway, so she has a new movie coming out called Don't Worry, Darling. And recently she said that what is ostensibly the main antagonist of the film is a character based on Jordan Peterson. And she said based on Jordan Peterson because he is, and I quote, the king of the incels. And Jordan Peterson's daughter, Michaela Peterson, addressed this very thing on her podcast, this very accusation on her podcast, and she pointed out that anyone who has spent any amount of time with Jordan Peterson and with his ideas and with his writings and his lectures will know that he is absolutely the opposite of the king of the incels. If anything, he is an antagonist to the incels. And she played a clip of him talking to Joe Rogan where he said he had a message to young men, which was, if women are constantly rejecting you, then the problem lies with you. That is the opposite of the incel attitude. If you don't know, incel means involuntary celibate. Incels are people who not only are they men who are unable to get laid, but they are men who have the belief that they are owed sex by women, and in some of the more extreme iterations believe that society ought to be altered in some manner so as to guarantee them access to sex. And now, to be clear, to be fair to them, that the people who are a part of that movement run the gamut from men who just can't get laid and are shy around women, all the way up to murderous psychopaths like Elliot Rodger who actually go out and kill people. And I say that to acknowledge that yes, there is a spectrum of belief within that, but fundamentally, incel culture is fundamentally toxic. And Jordan Peterson is absolutely the opposite of that. If you read his writing, if you actually look into what he believes over and over and over again, he has absolutely no sympathy whatsoever to men who see the world that way. And I went back and back, just mentally trying to think, like, what could she possibly be referring to? What could she possibly be referring to when she talks about Jordan Peterson being the king of the incels? And the only thing I could think of, there have been a number of times where Jordan Peterson has made statements where the media coverage that, biased people in the practicing yellow journalism have completely, and I think in times willfully, misinterpreted what he said and what he's trying to say. And and I thought about one thing where there was a time where he talked about how society, he believed that society should practice a concept that he referred to as enforced monogamy, or socially enforced monogamy. And what he was referring to there was he believed that a society was at its healthiest when it promoted monogamy, when it promoted one man marrying one woman, and so on and so forth. That particular idea is a little bit socially conservative for where I personally stand. But what he was saying was that the reason he was making that statement was actually in opposition to incel culture and in opposition to the beliefs of incel culture. What he was pointing out was that the resentment around which incel culture is based, it sprang up in resentment to, what they call the chads and that sort of thing, the men who are the pickup artists and things like that, the men whose concept of masculinity states that you're a man to the degree that you're able to successfully score sexually with multitudes of women, that it was a resentment to that attitude. And his idea was that a society that encourages men to focus on marriage and matrimony and monogamy and all of that would be a healthier and more robust society as a result. Nevertheless, what the media did was take what he said and run hog wild, accusing him of saying that women ought to be somehow herded off into, or women, they claimed he was saying, should be, somehow herded off to marry men they don't want to marry, or something like that, which is completely untrue, is completely the opposite of what he was actually saying. And so I wonder if that's what it was, or that was what did it. But what I want to bring up is, whether you agree with Jordan Peterson's ideas or not, the level of hysteria, of public hysteria, that this man has inspired is beyond irrational. It is one thing to disagree with his ideas. It is one thing to passionately voice your opposition to his ideas. I welcome that sort of thing. I'm happy to hear it. And believe it or not, I like to hear quality arguments against his ideas, because there are interesting and insightful things. I'll give you an example. Anna Kasparian, someone I normally don't care for, had a really good response to Jordan Peterson's concept about so-called enforced monogamy, which was, she pointed out that Jordan Peterson has been a big proponent of what's called the Pareto distribution theory, and that is that in any societal arrangement there will always be a top tier of people who enjoy the greatest degree of material prosperity within that society naturally polarizes that way, and you really can't do anything to stop it. And she said, well, doesn't his idea of enforced monogamy, quote unquote, where everybody is expected to be with one person, doesn't that run contrary to his ideas about doesn't that run contrary to his ideas about the Pareto distribution theory? And that is a good and valid question. That's insightful. I like that. What I can't stand are the things where people just make up things that he's never actually said, and it's a very bizarre phenomenon that seemed to start uniquely with him, but now it seems to have become the common practice, where we can't even agree on the objective terms of reality any longer. And to such a degree that I remember I saw a tweet recently after the Johnny Depp verdict. Someone put a statement on Twitter saying, "Please stop saying that Johnny Depp is not a wife beater. That was proven in court." No, it wasn't proven in court. It was never proven in court at either trial. It was never proven in court. In fact, the opposite, the exact literal opposite of that was proven in court. At the first trial, it was simply proven that the son had acted in good faith in referring to him as a wife beater. It was not in any way, shape, or form an affirmation of whether or not he was actually a wife beater. In the second trial, they definitively proved that he was not a wife beater. Not only was he not a wife beater, but he was someone who was being beaten by his wife, someone who was being actively abused by his wife. People live in this bizarre world where they just want to, they somehow have convinced themselves that if a thought enters their head, that thought somehow becomes objective reality, to a degree that the most extraordinary of religious zealots have been unable to accomplish in the minds of their flocks. And this is not a uniquely left-wing phenomenon. It is completely awash in conservative and right-wing circles as well. To this day, you can find people who just cannot believe that John Podesta and Marina Abramovich don't meet up regularly to eat babies. People who really and truly somehow have convinced themselves that the January 6th insurrection was, as they claim, a performance piece put on by members of Antifa and Black Lives Matter masquerading as MAGA supporters. To which I would say, who knew there were so many white members of Black Lives Matter? But anyway, so on and so forth. We are living in a world where people no longer agree upon an objective standard of reality. It has delineated to a point where we can no longer even agree on the terms of what we're arguing about. And so, I want to say something. The Jordan Peterson controversy hits home for me. And, again, the incel thing, the king of the incels line is, again, extraordinary to me, because if you've actually read his writing, you know that, again, like I said, that he is the polar opposite of that, to such a degree that his constant beating over the head of the idea, he so constantly beats you over the head with the idea that you as a man need to go find a woman and get married, and improve yourself to be the kind of man that a woman would want to be with. He hits you over the head with that idea so much that it is actually off-putting to someone like me who has no desire to be in a relationship at this point in his life. And to be very clear, I know whenever I say that, someone jumps in and says, "Wait, are you a MGTOW?" No, I'm not a MGTOW. I'm not anything associated with the manosphere at all. The manosphere is disgusting, it is a joke, and it is a cult, and it is horrifying. And the MGTOW within that are a particularly toxic strain. I regard them as spring-loaded vomit. I want nothing to do with them. Anyway, I just am simply someone who doesn't want to be in a relationship. I ascribe no great political or sociological significance to that whatsoever. Anyway, the point being, though, I actually had a personal experience with a friend of mine, someone that I have not seen in a long time, and I think I can probably regard as a former friend at this point, which really breaks my heart because it's someone I really and truly care about and was very much a very dear friend of mine. and very important to me. I don't like to talk about my personal life in too much detail or anything like that, so I'll refer to this person only in the most vague possible terms. But this was a friend of mine who I had posted a clip of Jordan Peterson on my private Facebook page, and I had posted. I was getting ready to do, you might, regular viewers of this channel, longtime viewers might recall that I used to do a podcast with my friend Stefan. We did a series called Book Talk with Jordan and Stefan, where we would review books. And as a podcast, the episodes are available here on this channel. People have asked, by the way, if we're going to do any more of those. We would like to. It's just very time consuming and complicated to plan out something like that. You basically have to take, and if you want to do a book a month, you basically have to take you have to take the book that you want to do and divide the number of pages by 30 and commit yourself to reading that number of pages every day, and it becomes a very laborious process rather than just reading for its own enjoyment. But we would like to do it again at some point. Anyway, that's beside the point. We were planning to do a segment on a book talk segment on 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson, reviewing it objectively, talking about its strengths and weaknesses, what we liked, what we didn't like, what we agreed with, what we didn't agree with, the writing style, all of that stuff we normally do on that program. This particular friend of mine was practically begging me not to do that segment of book talk because this friend was afraid that they would lose business opportunities, they would lose social standing, they would lose career standing, and they would lose friends if people found out that they were friends with a Jordan Peterson fan. And this was at the height of Jordan Peterson's popularity and controversy, to be sure. But that is insane. That is absolutely ridiculous. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand there are people that you would not want. There are people out there who are so toxic and so vile that you would not want to be associated with someone that was a fan of them. But we are not talking about, for example, Julius Evola. We are not talking about Richard Spencer. We are not talking about Jared Taylor. We are not talking about a vile fascistic person with a disturbing far-right utopian idea that involves that involves dark undertones of violence and a violent restructuring of society or something like that. And by the way, do not write in and give me a long-winded comment about how I'm wrong about the people I just mentioned as examples, about Julius Evola and Richard Spencer and Jared Taylor. I'm very well informed. I know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to argue it with you. And if you do that, I will just block you. I have no desire to hear that shit. And I say that, by the way, also to the hearing of the long-term fans of this channel who may try to write in with something like that to be funny. I don't remember your screen names by and large. I don't know who's a fan trying to be funny and who's someone genuinely trying to re-educate me about those assholes, so I will very likely just block you too. I don't want to hear it. Anyway, but this friend of mine, the idea that you would be afraid of people knowing that you have a friend who is a fan of Jordan Peterson. Now, years later, it's been years since I've seen that friend of mine. I think it's been close to 5 years at this point. Now, Jordan Peterson controversy has leveled off a little bit, and I can walk around talking to my coworkers at my day job about Jordan Peterson, and nobody cares. It's not controversial, and that's not just me yakking their ear off. Yes, they are interested in his ideas as well. But we can talk about Jordan Peterson openly and nobody cares. But the level of extraordinary controversy around this is just utterly ridiculous. and utterly insane. And the problem is we have lost our connection with the objective nature of reality when it comes to public discussion. We no longer take what people actually say and seriously consider it, and seriously debate it, and seriously discuss it with an objective respect for the existence of an alternate opinion. Instead, we formulate on both sides completely fictitious ideas of what a person has actually said and what they actually believe, and we shout at each other until the other person gives in, because we have we just start accusing the other person of being a vile, horrible person for supporting the views of the personality in question, and they either back down or we just leave in a huff. And that happens on both sides. And I'm doing, this is my third or fourth take of this, so I can't remember if I used this example already. Forgive me if I have. But on the left we have people like that. We have, I don't want to say people like that, but people who blow Jordan Peterson's views way out of the water, exaggerate them to even to the point of even accusing him of holding beliefs that are diametrically opposed to what he actually believes. We have, people who are convinced that, or somehow remain convinced that Johnny Depp is a wife beater, even though it's been proven in court that the exact opposite is true. The right is no better in this regard. The right is just as delusional about, there are issues that the right is just as delusional about. There are people on the right who really and truly cannot believe that John Podesta and Marina Abramovich do not get together and eat babies. There are people on the right who really and truly believe that the January 6th insurrection was actually a staged event put on by members of Antifa and BLM. To which I would say, who knew there were so many white members of BLM? Anyway, there are people who convince themselves of these things, and somehow the wild wingnut ideas that are not only unsupported by reality, but are factually the opposite, occupy a polar opposite to the factual objective nature of reality. These people and these warped views have been allowed to take control of the discussion to such a degree that that friend of mine that I was referring to was genuinely terrified that they would lose career standing and business opportunities and friends and social networking opportunities if it were discovered that they had a friend who was a Jordan Peterson fan. This is really and deeply disturbing. And what's amazing is I find myself so often nowadays in my commentary taking a position not on the issue itself, but rather taking a position on the discussion around the issue. And that is what's so extraordinary to me. Just sitting there and watching time after time as people don't discuss or debate reality. They take two wholly fictional concepts of the discussion and bash those against each other until one side finally caves in. It's exhausting. It's ridiculous. But good Lord, Jordan Peterson is not king of the incels.